Hi, welcome to Revenue Marketing Television, the CMO Insights series. I'm your host, Jeff Pedowitz, President and CEO of the Pedowitz Group. Today, as our guest, we have James Thomas, who is Chief Marketing Officer at Solium. James, welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Thanks, Jeff, for having me.
Really thrilled to have you. So, equity is a big business, right?
Big business. There's a lot going on. There was one of our customers just IPO'd again today. So there's this amazing experience of companies go from startup organizations to private organizations who are really trying to grow and build infrastructure as they go public. And then we get to work with some of the largest software and resource companies and natural industries, natural resource industries in the world. So it's pretty fascinating how different companies think about the concept of equity and how it motivates employees and how it drives company growth. And it's exciting to be a part of it.
I think anyone that's not in private equity looked at the Vista transaction with Adobe from Marketo in awe and envy, right? Whenever you can make $3 billion in 2 years.
Oh, I've been rich on paper many, many times as I've in my career, and thinking about the opportunities for growth and how that motivated but it's amazing to see how as you see companies go through IPO and how that changes the equity is great, but it changes so much about the organization and what the expectations are from a public company. I think people sometimes envy going back to being private, and certainly we've seen some of that in our market recently with likes of Marketo going public and then private and then getting acquired. It must have been quite a journey for them.
So how does your platform help manage the aspects, and then who would be some of the vendors you would compete with?
Sure. So it's interesting if you think about what the whole platform we're trying to do is actually pretty simple. You're a company who's trying to share wealth with employees and shareholders so that they can participate in the success of the organization. So at the simplest level, we're a software platform that allows you to manage that process. So be able to grant equity, be able to track when vesting schedules happen, eventually be able to make transactions if you're a public company, or even if you're a private company, if there's some type of liquidity event like a tender offer, be able to manage the plot process and flow. So at one level, that's a pretty simple challenge. But if you think about actually what happens, and there are so many acronyms in this market. I came from marketing technology background and been fairly new in our company. But you think about all of the form filings you have to do, all the SEC insider rules, all of the tax regulations, multiply that by, where we operate in about 150 different countries where people have different tax regulations and rules. It's a very, very complex system. So being an equity management software is not something you take lightly. It's something that's a long-term investment. And so we've been able to put this platform together to solve needs from very small companies all the way up to some of the largest companies with tens of thousands of employees. So our company competes in a space that's some pretty traditional competitors that have broader offerings, companies like E-Trade or Fidelity, who are offering wealth management services, but also have some software platforms. There are specialist vendors in our market, Computershare and others that provide very similar type of products for different markets. Cardiff company and smaller organizations and private market companies. So it's a pretty diverse space, lots of different ways to compete. And one of the things we've seen, we've done a lot of, is around the partner area. So a lot of these big organizations are not software companies, the ones that manage financial transaction for organizations. So companies like Morgan Stanley and UBS and Barclays in Europe all partner with us for our software, and they can provide their services on top of it. So we've kind of got a direct competitive space. We've got a really strong install base that we drive through, and then we've got obviously the partners that can take us to market in multiple different ways.
So are you predominantly marketing and selling to, I guess, the equity managers or the wealth managers, or do you also target, let's say, CFOs of companies that either are looking to or actively have private equity?
Yeah, in a smaller organization, often you're dealing with founders, and you'd be talking directly with them as well. But as you get larger, you start to deal with a CFO and a finance person in a more smaller private type of company. As you get bigger, there's a whole industry of and a whole group of stock plan professionals whose job it is to manage equity plans. So if we think about our from a marketing perspective, you're really looking at certainly a CFO, financial audience. There could be legal, could be equity plan administrators, and often CEO would get involved in a decision like this, because this is, especially in the area of executive compensation, really, really big topic, as you know, right now, the CEO pay gap and all of those conversations. Like many markets, you sell into a team of people, and you want it, and they all have different challenges along the way.
So you've had some interesting opportunities over the last few years, right? So you worked at Allocadia, you were at SAP Business Objects. How different audiences, right? So how is marketing here, say, different, compare and contrast to some of the other firms you've been at?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually talked to Marcos Lopez, our CEO, about a year before I joined. We had a mutual board member, a friend that connected us just to talk about the concepts of modern marketing. And something I've been super passionate about is the idea of marketing being part creative and part science, the art and science of marketing. And it's been a real passion of mine through those organizations, as I learned through, Crystal Decisions was very much a product company. Business Objects, much more of a strong marketing company with people like Dave Kellogg as their CMO at the time. Tracy Eiler, another CMO of Inside View, was there. So I had some great mentors along the way. And then the past few years, you see this real trend of marketers really needing to be obviously great storytellers, but also really looking at how we're driving the business, what the revenue opportunities are, where pipeline comes from. And so the last 7 years running, 8 years, I guess now, running marketing teams, understanding that I needed a broad set of focus on the pipeline and understanding and really acting like a chief revenue officer, but also driving the experience from a demand generation side. And then my background is actually product marketing, so pricing, packaging, positioning, and messaging. And so I feel like part of my success has been I've got to see all aspects of marketing, and in the past few years I've really turned the attention and backed away from some of the product marketing, except where it comes to pricing and packaging, to focus on how are we driving sales, what programs are being effective, what aren't, and so much has changed in that area, as where people are spending their time and how they're engaging. So using a lot of data, using a lot of information, but still I think I'm a pretty creative person too, so being able to play both sides is I think I'm not the best in any of those areas, but I think I have a good handle on how marketing impacts the business.
So in the way that you described it in your career progression, would you say then that you're looking for generalists also to join your team, or do you have some specialists, some generalists, or you want people that can kind of do a little bit of everything?
Yeah, I heard this term called the T-shaped marketer. So everyone's got to know a little bit about everything and have respect for other groups. I often challenge marketers, especially new marketers, to go do sales for a while, even so get some experience outside of marketing. People from product management could have some experience there. I think, so at one level, people should understand a lot of different areas, but I have a couple of people on my team that are really deep specialists in things like demand generation programs. Some things like that are actually pretty hard to do. So really understanding our systems and how our marketing automation system connects to our Salesforce automation system, and making sure we can track and measure results and dashboards and analytics. There's some special skills there. But when I joined the organization, I joined about 9 months ago here. Most people have changed their roles in some sort to really challenge them to get into a new area, or become more of a specialist. So become more of a specialist in content marketing versus a generalist. Become more of a specialist in demand gen versus a generalist. So I'm trying to challenge people to think of their career progression and marketing. I think there's a couple of people on my team that have this potential to take my job, and so challenging them to think outside of their scope, thinking about what marketing needs to evolve to, because it's going to change a lot as much in the next few years as it has in the last few years.
That's definitely for sure.
Yeah.
So what do you think has changed the most over the last couple of years?
Yeah, what we talked about a little bit was the real focus on revenue. And so there was this whole conversation we used to talk about marketing seat at the boardroom. Well, when we start our weekly or biweekly leadership meetings, I often of the one presenting the pipeline. That probably wouldn't have happened 2, 3 years ago. I believe so strongly that marketing has a significant role to play in driving revenue that we need to have a really good handle on it. And that doesn't mean just like what programs are we running, but what sales territories are performing, what we've recently got involved in some sales training, revamped our sales deck based on a challenger sales model. So really thinking about this concept of not just asking lots of questions, but we need to be experts and tell people what to do. We need to tell sales how to define their territories. We need to tell customers what solutions they should be using. So the shift to be, nobody has time to do all the discovery as much anymore. We need to support sales. We need to support customers. We need to support our team. We need to support our executives with information. And that's a big difference from when I first started, where we were really focusing on pricing, packaging, positioning, the 4Ps type of approach, which was still fundamental, but that's not enough anymore.
It is, but I think my partner Debbie, she speaks a lot of business schools each year, and she tells me that it's not changed dramatically since when we were in school, and that many of the universities are woefully behind in how they're preparing today's students. So why do you think that is? We know we're in marketing, it's changed a lot, but you would have thought they'd be at least teaching them some basics about the modern way of doing things.
Guys, so it's incredible. I think marketing hasn't changed since when I went at universities, hasn't changed in organizational development and some of the terms they use. But there are some progressive schools out there that have done their own work, but I think it's actually been almost contingent on CMOs and others to teach people how to do this. You get the on the job training, and we've in my past had quite a number of interns and others to feeling this responsibility to give back. I don't understand why that hasn't changed generally, why the 4Ps hasn't made a difference. I mean, they don't teach sales in universities much anymore either.
There's only a couple.
Yeah, and I think that therefore it's up to the corporate world, corporate America, to actually spend the time to do this, to actually teach people and drive that knowledge, because I think, especially things like product marketing, that's a real skill. And so people like pragmatic marketing have done a really good job of it. I know Debbie really well. I've talked to her in the past, and she's so passionate about the revenue-driven marketer. And using that terminology is kind of mind-blowing for people coming out of school. I think one of the things I've seen a lot of
mind-blowing for people that have been out for 20 years.
Yeah, exactly. And then people think marketing then is just all digital or all social. That's not true either. If we look at where our success from, like running a great event, is still a huge part of our marketing mix. Doing data, really understanding data and how it impacts is really part of it. So, we're looking often for people from different areas. People have stats background or someone who can really understand psychology and people, or where some of the best marketers come from, not necessarily from a marketing business school, even though I happen to have a degree from a business school in marketing.
That makes a lot of sense. So I think looking forward, as the progress you're making with your team, finish this sentence. So a year from now, I want my team to.
A year from now, my team at Solium will truly understand how they drive and impact the business. When I joined the organization, no offense to anybody, we were doing much more what I would call random acts of marketing. So my team would truly become a team. We would understand how corporate marketing team supports the business in the regions. The regions, we operate in a global environment. The regions will really understand what their role is and understanding what their sales counterparts need. And we would do that in a way that we would come to a meeting in a year from now with all of the data that we've captured over the past year, and have a really strong opinion on where we should spend our time. And so we would do a lot less random acts of marketing and much more organized and aligned, and that the sales guys would come to us and say, let's do this together. And I think we're starting that path, but we've got a ways to go.
I can almost envision a t-shirt, right? You should get it with like RAOM with a line through it, right? It's just no more, because we're marketers, we have to come up with a slogan for it. Right?
Recently I've been here, again, 9 months, and I've tried a couple things just to see how our team could really operate. And we did a program for our private market teams around tender offers and say, okay, let's get all the different teams together: sales, content marketing, product marketing, and we've got a bit of and create a global and then regional executive program. It was kind of a test to see how we could work together, and it was amazing what we accomplished, and that was great. And then from a brand perspective, we just did something similar, as much a test as anything. Is could we come up with a big idea, a big theme, something that could be overarching our product line to talk about something in the industry? And we created this concept called Stocktoberfest. So if you look at hashtag Stocktoberfest, you can see some of the ideas we had is not just talk about us, but talk about this industry and why, being in equity compensation is actually a pretty cool thing to do, and created more of an industry movement. And those are my big beliefs. At Allocadia in the past, we created the run marketing movement. So really simplify and talk about how marketers had two jobs, do marketing, the creative side, and run marketing, understand the business of it. And I was really proud of that program. It created great traction in our industry. And, my mission here is to come up with big ideas and make marketing fun again, and make it compelling and change the world, and, get everybody on the same page. And so those are a couple of things we've tried, and I'm excited about how my team has really grasped onto it and how our organization has grasped onto that. How our CEO has been, really challenging me to come up with big ideas, but, not sure, he's really trusting me. And yeah, sometimes I might have pushed the limits a little bit. But I feel like he's got my back to come up with even more big ideas around our brand next year.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So happy to see all the success you've had, James.
Thank you
for being on the program today, and we'll have to get you back soon.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. I really appreciate the time.
You bet.